Sometimes we have to let go of the past to find our brightest future and our true self. This position is very close to a draw, but white has an extra pawn that is so close to promoting, and it starts to push it. Because of course, if the rook tries to stop it, this is actually a mistake after rook d1, protecting the pawn from behind, and if the rook takes like this, well, now there is simply no way to stop the promotion, and white will win the game. But black is not that naive, and plays instead rook to c4 check, skewering the king and rook. And now if for example the king goes to d2, the rook is not going to trade, but instead play rook to d4 check, attacking both the king and the pawn, and picking up the pawn like this. And if the king goes to b2, now the rook goes to d4 anyway, and this time this doesn't work because the king is not defending the rook. So instead of that, white needs to find the courage to go forward with king to d3, abandoning the rook and going all in on this pawn promotion. But there's one more problem. If we get this queen now, rook to d1 is going to skewer the king and queen and pick up the queen behind the king. And if the king goes down to avoid the skewer, now rook to c5 prepares to fork the queen and king like this, forcing the queen to give herself up and landing in this position that it's actually winning for black. So the only move that still fights for an advantage here is king to e2, defending these infiltration squares. And now if the rook goes to c5, we can get the queen because this doesn't come with check, and we're simply going to win. But the rook can start checking our king like this, and if we ever come back to this file, rook to c5 is going to work. So we need to come up, and the rook can keep checking us. We go up, and the rook checks us. But now there's an issue. If we go one more step up, the rook is going to check us one more time, and after the king moves, it's simply going to land on d5, and it's ready to sacrifice itself for the last pawn. Now of course white has the option to go for a draw here, by repeating this pattern of going down and up, chased by the rook. And this would happen if this king didn't have the courage to let go of the past and abandon this pawn. Because king to e5 is indeed the correct move. Now the rook can check us, and after we move, it will land on d5 and it will stop the pawn. But you see, it doesn't matter anymore, because the king goes to f6. And now we have two threats. One is to get the queen, which can be easily stopped. But once we do get the queen, we now have a checkmate on g5 with a pawn. And white wins this game. If you love incredible chess, follow for more.